Welcome back. Alex Wiseman here, still talking about the syllabus for CIE 400, Comparative and International Education. We just moved through the first part of the syllabus where we talked about the objectives and goals for the class. We talked about some of the modes of instruction. We talked about academic integrity, and we talked about accommodations for any students that might need them. Now what I'd like to do is to talk a little bit about course grading and assignments, which if you have the syllabus in front of you, and you can see it on the screen here, it's on, I think, page 3. Let me just make sure. Yep, page 3. And you'll see that we have listed several of the assignments right here in this section right here. And it lists them and what they're worth in the course, and it adds up to 100. Funny how that works. So 10% for participation, 10% for student-led discussion, 10% for your first written assignment, which is the What is CIE essay, 20% for an annotated bibliography, 10% for a presentation, and 40% for a research synthesis, totaling up to 100%. So let's talk about participation. Participation is something that you do every week, whether you are live in class or whether you're at a distance and live on Google Hangout, or at a distance and asynchronous, meaning that you're not live but you're watching the recordings and you're participating in our online discussions. Right? Whatever your status in the class, you need to come to class prepared to discuss the assigned readings. I want you to ask questions about the readings. I want to engage your peers in an informed discussion about the assigned readings and the topic. Active participation in class discussions that reflects an understanding and a synthesis of the assigned readings is our goal. You are graduate students, so this is what we expect. I want you to come prepared with notes and questions from the readings. I want you to be vocal in posing your questions and engaging both your professor and classmates in discussion that is relevant to the week's topics and readings. If you need help preparing for class, I suggest you use something like the weekly reading memos template, which I put at the end of this syllabus, although it is not required, and so I'm not going to talk about it right now, but you can take a look at that at the end of the syllabus. If you think that's something that would help you as you're reviewing the readings and preparing for class, then use it. If not, do your own thing. I also want to highlight that since this is a class of both on-campus and online students, participation using our website is especially important. I've already got discussion threads online for each week, and you know already that as part of your participation grade, you're expected to post comments or thoughts to each of the week's topics or readings by the end of the day every Thursday after class. You are required to begin with a paragraph that is 5 sentences minimum of constructive criticism of the comments posted immediately before you that week. But if you are the first person to post comments for a week's topics, you do not have to write any constructive criticism. You can just post your own comments or thoughts. Right? So participation, being active and vocal, coming prepared, huge. It's huge. Making sure that you post your comments on the discussion part of our class website. It's huge. I look at that. I'm not going to respond to every one, but I do read them all, and I keep track of who's posting. So please, please, please do that. Next, student-led discussion activity, and it says due when scheduled, right? So depending on the number of students in the class, and we don't have a final count yet at this point because we have people still enrolling, quite frankly, up until right before class starts. Either individuals or pairs or even small groups, if we have a large class of students, will be responsible for preparing and leading a discussion on the readings in class. I would like to emphasize that a discussion is not a presentation. It's a discussion, right? If you're coming to class prepared with questions that you could pose to me or to your classmates anyway on a regular day, just think of this as a ramped up version of that. Your classmates will provide you with structured feedback on the content, usefulness, and engagement of the discussion activity, and I would like for you to prepare an activity, something that will engage the students both online and in class with each other or with a set of questions. It needs to be informative, relevant, and quite frankly, interesting. Right? I'm going to do the boring stuff anyway. I'm going to be the one sort of pointing at people and saying, what do you think? What do you think? And leading discussion that way. What is a discussion activity that you can do that will be different? Right? Be creative. I'm also requiring that you write a blog post, let me highlight this, a blog post that complements your discussion activity and post it on our class website. Right? That means that over here, I'm going to click back over to the class website. Remember this page that says posts and updates? You all will be posting something here, a blog post that will be related to your reading discussion activity, right? Whatever the topic is for that week. What I would suggest, and I'm not requiring this, but maybe I should. Oh, we'll think about it. What I would suggest is that you write your blog post ahead of the week when you're leading discussion activity so that the class can read your post and have that background information. Make that your presentation if you need to present something. And they'll have that in mind for when they come to class. It'll already be there. It'll already be available. Okay. So discussion, student-led discussion activity. We will actually go through the syllabus on the first day of class, and I will ask you to volunteer for specific dates that you want to be the discussion leader. Right? So please take a look at the syllabus ahead of time. Please take a look at the readings for each of the dates. You will see where there's a discussion leader line. If there's a discussion leader line there and it's blank, that one's still available. So please think about which one you want as your first choice, which one you might want as your second choice in case you can't get your first choice. Next. What is CIE? That will be your first written assignment. It should be 3 single-spaced pages. It's worth 10% of your grade, and it's due on September 18th. Quite simply, what is your definition of comparative and international education? How could you empirically observe an educational phenomenon from a comparative and international perspective? Use a real educational phenomenon to ground your definition and explanation of CIE from your own perspective. See where we're going with this? The goal is for you to both personally define comparative and international education and to identify a topic for further study or research that is either within or framed by comparative and international education. And that topic for further study is what you will use for your next assignments. So all of your written assignments and your presentation, they all thread together. They all build on one another. Quite frankly, the idea is that by the time you're at the end of this, it's all one big assignment. It's just broken down into parts. But the first part is for you to think about what is CIE. Excuse me. So I've broken it down for you. You can see there are 6 parts that I'd like for you to structure into your What is CIE paper. The first part is I'd like for you to define education. And I've given you an example. This is Wellfall 2014. This actually came in my inbox as an update from an education blog that I subscribe to. I thought it was really interesting and a good way to think about how you might define education yourself, so I put it here. So don't copy Wellfall's definition, but use this as a way that you could think about how you're defining education. So you can see that Wellfall said education is the process where information is organized into knowledge, and with appropriate processing and experience may result in wisdom and therefore a happier, productive, and less risky life. That's actually an interesting phrase that aligns with a lot of research. Anyway, so you can see this is an example. It goes on a little beyond that, but you can read it on your own. Think about what your definition of education is. Right? So we're just breaking down the components of comparative and international education, starting with education. Next, define international and define comparative. Now, you can certainly look at what a dictionary says. You can look at what other people or our assigned readings say, but I'd really like for you to have your own definition. So use the references, definitely, and cite them. But build this definition of international and your definition of comparative in your own words. Next, I would like for you to synthesize your definitions of international, comparative, and education into a complete personal definition of comparative and international education. Right? Next, I would like for you to describe how you could empirically observe your version of CIE in a real-world situation anywhere in the world. Right? How would you see, meaning that you could choose anywhere in the world. Right? How could you actually see CIE in action based on your definition? What would you need to look at? Now, we'll talk about how you can do that and what some examples are in class, but I want you to start thinking about that now. Then I'd like for you to ask an interesting, provocative question about your real-world CIE situation that you thought of in number 4 that has not been fully or adequately answered yet. And then I'd like for you to explain why this question both fits within the realm of research and topics that are considered comparative and international education, broadly speaking. And I'd like for you to explain why this is a question worth answering using empirical research methods. Okay, and fitting all that into 3 pages. You can see that these definitions can be big paragraphs, right? Paragraph, 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 paragraph. You know, you got basically 7 paragraphs here. I think 7 paragraphs can fit into 3 single-space pages. So start thinking about that right now. What are your definitions of education? What are your definitions of international? What are your definitions of comparative? And how might you begin to synthesize international, comparative, and education together? We will obviously be discussing this in class. You will obviously have some readings related to this. So you're not finalizing anything yet, but get a head start on this. Start to think about how you're approaching this and really start to think about how you're going to empirically observe and then explain how this might be something worthy of bigger research. All right, we're going to pause there and come back in the next screencast to talk about the annotated bibliography and the next assignments after that.